Haud
Yer
Yer
Wheesht.
Wheesht. Welcome to Haud Yer Wheesht, the podcast where we do everything but Haud Yer Wheesht. My name is Mosco, aka Wee Scottish Lass, and today I'm joined with Shaun
Hello.
of Shaun Vlogs and Erin,
Hi.
aka Beauty Creep. In this week's episode, we will be talking about maladaptive daydreaming and lucid dreaming. But first of all, I wanted to ask, have either of you two ever heard of maladaptive daydreaming?
Never.
Only from you, but no.
So let me give a little bit of context on it then. According to the Healthline website, maladaptive daydreaming is when someone spends long periods engaging in structured daydreams or fantasies. It can affect their ability to focus on studies or be productive at work. Maladaptive daydreaming shares features with behavioural addictions, such as the addiction to internet, gaming, or even alcohol.
Oh. Now that you describe it, I probably
Interesting.
have had that at some point in life.
Yeah.
So there's differences obviously between maladaptive daydreaming and regular daydreaming. Regular daydreaming is usually shorter, like the daydreams are much shorter. There's maybe like small breaks and then the mind wanders and that's kind of it, and then you come back. Maladaptive daydreaming is the immersion into an alternate reality inside someone's head. So while regular daydreaming is kind of pleasant, but real life is kind of preferred, it can help the person lay out plans or goals. Like you might daydream a little bit about, like, if you've got an upcoming interview, you might like sort of think about, oh, how might that go, something like that. Maladaptive daydreaming can become addictive and very disruptive to somebody's life, and sometimes it can be a person's only or main source of happiness.
Well,
Wow.
okay. That's quite deep.
I
Very.
know.
Very.
Jeez.
So it can also be used as a way for people to escape very horrible living situations as well. So as you can imagine, people create these own universes entirely inside their head. And the reason why I started learning about maladaptive daydreaming and it came up with me is throughout COVID and lockdown. That's when I started to realise that a lot of people who were living by themselves started to rely on this more. So I'm going to start off the questions then. Shaun, I'll come to you first. Have you ever daydreamed, like normal daydreaming?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I don't really I'm trying to think if I've got any examples recently, but probably not. But like the way you're talking about maladaptive daydream, I'm not even sure I'm saying that right. It's probably something I've done at times over the years. But yeah, definitely had daydreams all through my life.
Yeah, it's kind of
Yeah.
not something you think of as you're doing it
Yeah.
until maybe someone kind of points out that you're not here. If that makes sense.
It kind of makes sense. Like, I mean, what you were saying as well about obviously during the pandemic when the times were hard for a lot of people, but you can totally imagine that people in different situations here at home or around the world, times of war and stuff, they would rather be anywhere else than where they are, and you can imagine people using that as a form of escapism.
Yeah, and like as a coping mechanism for sure.
Yeah.
100%. Oh, it's just interesting because it's something I've not really properly thought about. It's just something that you don't normally think about.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to get right into this.
I think so. If I remember, there's definitely been times in my life when I've been younger, especially. Probably not having done this for a while, but like, if I ever had any kind of major like lifestyle type of things that I wanted in my life, this is quite deep. I don't think I've really talked about this before to anyone. It's like a psychology session. Like trying to think, for example. So when I was young, and I totally don't have the same dreams anymore, but when I was young, I used to dream that I was going to be a footballer.
Oh.
And so I probably,
That's cute.
and I can recall the time when I was younger, like probably a teenager, like daydreaming that I was actually a footballer, and like I was doing the things that I wanted to do, like I was being signed up and I was living the footballer lifestyle.
Oh, cute.
You know what I mean?
So
Yeah,
let me
100%.
pursue some of those with you then, Shaun. So like, would you say that you did this throughout the day? Was there particular times of the day that you would do it? Was it at night as you were going to sleep? Like,
I would say it was probably pretty persistent thinking about it, to be honest. When at certain stages in my life, like this is talking a long time ago, but there was definitely times when I thought, well, I was like basically dreaming that I was living that lifestyle.
and did you find that it helped you cope with like school or
Yeah, definitely. I would have said that's probably why I was doing it. To be honest, I was like daydreaming. I was living a different lifestyle, and I definitely would have struggled to focus because of that.
And I think people don't realise how common this is until you start talking about it, right?
Yeah.
Like, even, like, it can be something as simple as, you know, when you go driving, have you ever driven your car before and then not realised that you've arrived somewhere because you were so lost in your own thoughts?
Yeah.
All the time.
All the time,
Yep.
yeah.
And that could be seen as a way of maladaptive daydreaming, in the sense that you were, like, whatever it was you were thinking about, that's technically disruptive to your life because you weren't really, I wouldn't say you weren't paying attention to the road, but you maybe weren't as aware and in the moment as you should have been whilst driving.
Definitely.
I know it's funny, like if you do certain things, like you go into certain gears and stuff and you just don't even think about it. I remember when I was doing my driving lessons and people were like, oh, you don't even think about it eventually, and I'd be like, I right. But you don't. You totally don't. And then there's been times where I've driven my friend home and he moved house and I kept like, I went on autopilot and would just drive him to his old house without thinking. I just wasn't here.
It happens. It's so weird. Like you get kind of zoned out, right?
You just do it without even realising.
Yeah. But no, this totally makes sense to me. Like, there's definitely been times in my life, like not even that. So that was when I was younger, but when I've been older, like I've always been quite ambitious. And there's been times when like things haven't been going the way I thought they would, and I would dream quite often that I was living the lifestyle that I wanted to live, and like I was a successful person, and so it was still very much me. It was maybe a better looking. It was maybe a better looking me, but it was me. But I had the success that I was looking for, so I would dream that quite often, daydream, and it wasn't just at night. I mean, it probably mostly at night, to be honest, but certainly during the day. So yeah, I mean, this makes sense to me. If that's, you know, if what I'm talking about, if that is kind of what your understanding is of what this thing is, then yeah.
Yeah, that is maladaptive daydreaming, 100%. It's really interesting, actually, Sean, because the ones that you've sort of been talking about are what the major examples of maladaptive daydreaming are, in the sense that you've got like this alternate reality, I guess, like this alternate universe where you are this other thing, and you revisit it over and over again. A daydream. The difference between a daydream and a maladaptive daydream is a daydream is maybe like, oh, you listen to one song in the car and you imagine yourself on stage singing that song. Like, that's just a regular daydream, you know. It's maybe a flying by, but you don't think about it again. It doesn't come up again. You know what I mean? You don't dwell on it. Whereas a maladaptive daydreaming is, okay, actually you are in your head a singer-songwriter, and every song that comes on that you're listening to, you're singing every single one of those songs, multiple, you know. That is the difference. That's the big difference between the two of them. Maladaptive daydreaming tends to be longer, and it tends to be ongoing, and you tend to dip in and out of the alternate universes that you've created inside your head.
It's really weird, actually, because like those type of dreams that I'm talking about, like everything about me was still me.
Yeah.
It's just that I was like a better version of myself, if you know what I mean.
More successful, better
More successful,
looking.
yeah. But you know what? It's definitely been times when things haven't been going right in my life. Like, I think I've been quite content for a while, I would say, in my life. Like, it's been a long time that I've been quite content, I would say. And so it's been a long time since that's ever come into my head. If that makes sense?
Yeah.
What
So
about
your
you, Erin?
daydreams... No, I just find that so interesting because Sean's daydreams tend to be sort of focused around like goals and like a different version. I don't know. Oh, this is just mind blowing. Basically, I've just learned that I'm a huge maladaptive daydreamer.
I bet you a lot of people listening have.
Yeah, a lot of people listening are like, I do that.
Like, you have no idea. I'm in my head probably like, I want to say 70% of the time.
So
I often have to, I often Google, like, I don't know, a lot of times, again, I get mixed up with this, and I guess, like, dissociation, but also, I'm just so in my head a lot of times, and when I was a child, oh my god, I was always told off for just zoning out, completely zoning out, and I would be in a completely different world. I had countless invisible friends and invisible pets, and I'd write them all down, and they would be real. No, they would be.
Was
like,
this all your dogs? All your dog breeds?
Oh god, have I talked about that? Oh, Jesus.
I think that was on one of our first episodes. You mentioned that.
Oh my god. Well, that was like a massive thing, and because of my imagination, I used to write stories all the time, and I used to read them out in front of the class and stuff, and that was
Wow.
like a huge thing I used to do. I used to have to get it out because I'd just be in my head. I was an only child, and I used to have to just amuse myself as a kid. So I used to be like in my bedroom just like daydreaming and writing stories and stuff. And a big thing I used to do as a kid that I still do is I would lie down, listen to music, and just get totally zoned out into a different world.
Yeah.
And
That sounds, to me that sounds like a really healthy thing. Like that sounds to me like a really creative person
I still
that has
do
got
that,
a
though,
lot
like,
to, think about. And if you think about all the great thinkers of the world who have achieved loads of amazing things, they were pretty much all the same, right?
Yeah. I mean, maladaptive daydreaming can be beneficial, and it can also be disruptive. Like obviously, a lot of the studies talk about the more negative side of it when it starts to really disrupt your life. And we'll talk. There's somebody in my family who, I won't name them, but there's somebody in my family who, like, can't even stay in the room with family. They have to disappear. And like they have to disappear for a couple of hours to go inside their alternate reality inside their head, and they have to like pace backwards and forwards. Like, to some people it becomes an absolute addiction. But do you know what? It's the same. Maladaptive daydreaming is the same way as like playing video games. Like there's the people that can sit down, play video games for a couple of hours after they've done all their chores for the day, and then they go to bed and they get up and they live a normal life.
Yeah.
And then you've got the people who cannot leave the video games alone. They are on them until 4 a.m. They're calling in sick to work. Like, it's different for every person. And you're right, maladaptive daydreaming or regular daydreaming can be a very healthy and natural thing. It's about learning to balance it in your life so that it's not disrupting your life.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I used to work in this woman's house. Sorry, Sean.
No, go for it.
No, I used to work in this woman's house, and a lot of times she would be sleeping, and I'd sometimes be there for like 8 hours. And once I'd like done housework and like pottered about and tidied up and stuff, I'd be like, oh, I can either sit and read, or, and a lot of times like the music would be on and I would just sit and daydream for hours. Like I would sit for like at least 2 hours and just be in my head, and that's how I passed the time.
But would your daydreams be like real life stuff, or would it be like me where you kind of create like a new version of life?
All different stuff. Like a lot of times it would be stuff that's not out of reach. Like I don't often dream about things that I want, like goal orientated type stuff. It's always like, it's usually social related, like social interactions, conversations with people, stuff like that. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah.
But it's not usually like, oh, my life could be this, but it's more like conversations with people and like interactions with people. It's really strange. Like,
it's
I
weird,
feel like,
isn't it?
Yeah, a lot of my life is like associated or sort of like based on like my interactions with people. I live for that stuff, so I just sit and think about that.
But is it like replaying like kind of conversations you had with people, or?
Yeah, like either replaying stuff or inventing new conversations and inventing new scenarios and like fun things that could potentially happen. Or sometimes I'll sit and think about things that could happen. I'll sit and laugh my head off, and then I'll have to message my friend and be like, I just had this daydream.
That's amazing. I love that.
She'll be like, are you okay?
This is so interesting, Like this, I think
find
this is
this
like
fascinating.
I feel like this is like a psychology session. Maybe that's what we should call this podcast, psychology sessions or something. But that's what I feel like this is, because it's making me think about things that I've never thought about. And as we're talking, I've just realised something. So, as we've been, I've been telling you about my kind of daydreaming that I used to do quite a lot when I was younger, especially, which, Tammy, you're saying is this thing that I've never ever identified before. I probably always, thinking about it now, it was always during times when I had high anxiety. And I think I mentioned to you guys before, my anxiety was always related to being in silence and then quiet and on my own. I hated that. I never ever used to be able to deal with that. And that's when I used to fade off into my own wee world more. And it would kind of suppress the thoughts of like fear and anxiety that I had. And then times when I was more socially active, it would go away because I was occupied. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and it's what it's a coping mechanism for some people. So for some people that may have PTSD, they might play out the situation differently in their head as a way of sort of trying to get round it or get their thoughts together on it and then try and overcome it. And for other people that might have anxiety or panic disorders, they can go into an alternate reality in their head that might just help calm them down because they're not thinking about whatever's got them freaked out in the real world. Yep.
I've
so
just
that makes
thought of
perfect
something
sense. And actually, Erin, just before we come to you, I'm wondering, just from what I know of you, like your daydreams sound social, and that's something that you say you sometimes struggle with, like, is meeting people. So do you think that, like, might tie into why yours are the type of daydreams that you have?
I was just gonna say, like, potentially, but also, like, I also just realised as well, like, sometimes I'll go into these daydreams. This is quite embarrassing.
Go for it.
Go for it.
And it's like, sometimes I have this weird hero complex.
That's not embarrassing.
I'll go into these daydreams where, I don't know, I'll be in a situation where maybe I'm in a pub or something and the pub's been held hostage.
Oh, nice.
And I'll, like, get up and, like, I don't know, either talk the guy down, because it's always a guy, and, or, like, I don't know, tackle him or something and, like, restrain him and be like, someone phone the police.
So you almost, like, become the hero in the story?
Yeah, I always had things like that because in real life I know for a fact I would not be that guy. And also I realised as well, like, when you were talking about coping mechanisms and things, a lot of times when I am feeling depressed and wallowing, I'll sit and replay out worst case scenarios of everything in my life, and sometimes I'll just fall asleep to these thoughts, and I'll just, like, fall asleep to just not replaying, but playing out these scenarios in my head that probably won't happen, but could. And I don't know why sometimes it's like a weird sort of thing where sometimes it does soothe me and I will fall asleep. It's really bizarre. The brain is a weird place.
It's so weird, isn't it, the head, like that, when you fall asleep. And I totally relate to what you're saying there. You know, you create these situations that kind of feel better, and obviously it definitely helps you get off to sleep and stuff. But for me, like, it was the silence and it was the worry of, like, kind of fear of failure. And I think so the kind of dreams that I used to have more recently, I guess, when I was kind of in my 20s, was like, I dreamed that I was like some kind of international travel playboy who had a yacht and would, go off around the world and go to all these amazing places, and, like, had enough money to buy whatever I wanted and all that kind of stuff. And like I said, it was always during the times when yeah, I mean that, but I used to dream I was this person, like I owned this yacht and I used to go sailing around the world and all the rest of it. And it was always definitely during times when I was anxious, because when I was anxious I used to only think about being anxious, and then when I had these kind of daydreams, it used to take me out of that. It used to relax me and it let me go to sleep. So it never used to consume me, and it never really used to distract me during the day when I had things to do, or when I was in conversations with people, or when I was working. But certainly in times of anxiety it used to take that feeling away, if that makes sense.
That is so interesting, because, like, a lot of times when I daydream, I stray away from, like, sort of professional situations or things where I do succeed in life or certain things like that, because I just don't even want to think about that sort of thing, because I'm like, I don't know, that's a sort of weird anxiety thing. It's always social. I don't think about jobs and I don't think about stuff like that, because I'm just like, I don't want to think about it. Really weird. Tammy, what about you?
Well, you're talking to the biggest geek in the podcast here, so what do you think mine's are about?
Yeah.
So like I'm one of these maladaptive daydreamers that, see, when I've watched a movie like The Avengers, suddenly I'm like another Avenger, or
that's awesome.
Like, if I have been, like, say for example, recently I've been playing a lot of Zelda, not Ocarina of Time, Breath of the Wild, and like there are different, would you call it, different races, I guess. So if you know, like when you play Dungeons and Dragons, you've got your elves, you've got your dwarves, you've got like your different species, your different races of people. It's like I am either one of those like types of races, but I am myself, but I'm not. I'm like a completely alternate version of myself that's in this reality of whatever I've been watching or gaming or playing or whatever recently.
I relate to that so much.
So you wouldn't really be recognisable to yourself as you are. You'd be a totally different character. Yeah,
usually totally different character, but same personality. Personality is always me, but looks would be different. So, for example, elf, you would have all your elf features, and then sometimes I create my own races in my head, and like you're like the last of your kind type thing. You know what I mean? Like there's so many. The possibilities are honestly endless, but I realised that mine started to become slightly disruptive in lockdown. So I've always done this throughout my whole life. I've always been that person at the back of the class that the teacher goes, Tammy, stop daydreaming,
Yep.
but I always used to keep it at night, so it would never impact my job, my work, my studies, anything like that. It would always be like nighttime was my time. I would go to bed kind of early-ish, and I still do to this day. Like, my bedtime's about 10:30 at night. I'm not a night person, I'm more of a morning person, and that's because I go to bed early so I can get like an hour of maladaptive daydreaming in as I'm falling asleep. And it also helps me write scenes in my fan fiction as well. Like, I'll play out scenes of the characters and how they interact, and then before I fall asleep I'll wake up and take a note on my phone if there's like a really funny interaction I want to happen, or I've overcome how I want a particular scene to go.
But that sounds like, when I was saying this is like this sounds like it's something from very creative people. Like, yes. I would imagine this is something, what you're describing, Tammy, that a lot of like real famous authors do.
I would be very surprised if they didn't. I'd be very surprised if they didn't. Like, to me, that is the part of the creative process for things. But do you ever find that you do something similar with YouTube? Like, sometimes I'll visualise how I want a video to go before I've even started writing a script or shooting it.
Some very rarely, to be fair. Like, see, when it comes to YouTube, and like, see when it's actual real life, very rarely, because as I said, mine are more social based. Mine aren't really based around YouTube and things. It's a very weird. But like, I just thought of something else. Like, sometimes my brain does this thing where like, say for example, see if I'm listening to music at night, a lot of my daydreams will be like in a pub or something. I'm listening to the music and I'm like talking to people and like socialising or whatever. But sometimes my brain, I don't know if it's an OCD thing, but my brain will just like maybe put a table in between, and it, no matter like how much I try and visualise or try and get rid of the table in my head, it just comes back. So I have to then visualise people carrying the table out of the room to get rid of it. It's very straight. Like, if there's something in the way, like blocking me from talking to this person, so I think it's like, it's almost like another part of my brain that's just like, have that. And then
I'm talking
to someone, or I don't know, it's just like something will be blocking this person, and I'm like trying to talk to them, and then I can't get out of the way, so I'll have to visualise someone actually removing it. It's really bizarre.
It's part of the scenario. Like, that's interesting.
It's almost like two parts of the brain that are like kind of going against each other. It's really weird. It's hard to explain. I don't think I've explained that very well.
So weird that we've come onto this topic, because it's like something I'd never thought about before, other than the fact that when I was doing it, but I'd never thought it was a thing that even other people did, or it was, diagnosable. But it's something I've definitely done throughout my life. But
I've noticed it a lot, like with people going, Erin, and I'm not there.
For me, it's definitely about this idea of contentment. And I don't know, like, contentment is something that I'm really kind of scared of in some senses. I never want to be content. I always want to be pushing myself and to being a better person. But I've definitely been in a comfy place in the last few years, and I've always had things to do. I've always had a very full schedule, lots of work, and I've been quite lucky that way during the pandemic, and I'm together with my wife, so I'm never alone.
Yeah, you're a busy guy.
Yeah.
But I think it's a contentment thing, and maybe it's probably meant that I've not done this for quite a long time because I've had this contentment feeling. Don't get me wrong, there's definitely times when it's not been easy as well during the pandemic for everyone, but I don't like the thought of contentment, because I don't want to think, is this it? Like, am I settled now?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. No, that's a good thing though. See, I'm more like, I think I'd be more complacent, like with being content. I'd be like, I'm content, I'm good. I think I'll just stay here. I get very comfortable.
Yeah.
But what was I going to say there about? I can't remember. Just skip over me and I'll come back to what it was about. I cannot remember. I just instantly forgot.
I love the thought that, Tammy, you're saying that this is stuff that you think of and it actually becomes useful, but to something you write, it becomes something that's not just a thought in your head. I think that's really interesting.
It hard to separate that. Like,
it can be difficult.
I wish I had that. Like, I find it hard to sort of make up my own stuff, because I try and relate it to everything that's happening in my life, and I find it hard to separate real life and
maybe why that's easier for me is because I play. I mean, I don't think either of you two really play video games, do you?
Not really, no.
And it could maybe be the gamer in me that finds it easier to do that. But I sometimes struggle as well, in the sense that, like, I could be visualising a scene between two characters that I've just been struggling to write, and so I put it away, I stop writing, and then as I'm going to bed, I'm thinking about it in my head, and I'm trying to put the characters together in that situation again to see if they interact differently under different circumstances. And then all of a sudden part of me is like, oh, but what if this other person could be, and I'm like, yeah, but that person is not in the scene, they're not even at this part of the book, go away that person. And then it's like all I can think about, it becomes a distraction. So sometimes it can work and sometimes it can't. And then there's other times where I'm like, yeah, it's really cool that the main hero's doing this, but it'd be even cooler if I could do that thing and then destroy that person, or be
that's
the
awesome.
hero.
I mean, that to me, that sounds like the beginning of somebody is about to create like the next Harry Potter type of thing.
Yeah.
But it really is, and you know,
sorry, Sean.
this is like so far. I feel like I'm going down a rabbit hole here. Like,
I love it.
me. Forgive me if I'm being bold in saying this, right? But me and Erin, ours sound like stuff that is like very close to our real life. And
100%.
Tammy, what you're talking about is like something that is just so sci-fi and amazing that you could create something. You could create something genius out of it.
Yeah, Tammy, I was going to ask you that, because I was thinking, like, so can you're able to then separate your ideas from your games and from people you know in real life? Because see, when I'm writing, right, I love writing, but I always have to base it on people I know, because it's all I know, and I find it so hard to make up my own things. I find it very hard to do that. I just had this blank space where I'm like, nope. So I have to then relate it to people I know, and like stuff like that, films or TV, and it's like, I don't want to copy these things.
Technically, that's what I'm doing. So fan fiction is basing after characters, aren't you?
Yeah.
So you're not really writing your own content as such.
Yeah, that's true. That probably helps a lot.
It definitely helps a lot, yeah.
So do you write anything other than fan fiction? Like, do you make up your own stuff, or is it usually just fan fiction?
So I did start writing I started writing a book. Oh God, this is going back. This is really going back. I did start writing a book called The Dragon Scale, and it was effectively. It starts off with this girl, and she. Very much what we're talking about right now, actually. She goes to school, and she's just got like the most normal life. It's so normal, it's boring. You know, she goes to school, and the guy she likes doesn't really know she exists, and her grades are average, and just like, and then after school she's got to go and help look after her disabled grandfather who's in a wheelchair and can't walk, and she takes the dog out and everything. But then there's one day that she wakes up and she goes into school, and the guy that she likes is suddenly acting like they've been dating for years. And then she goes to her granddad's house, like she's getting straight A's, and then she goes to her granddad's house after school, and he's up walking and talking, and he's not in a wheelchair. And it's that's how it starts, and then it all starts to unfurl around this unusual object that she found in her granddad's study. So
wow. That sounds really good.
I think we're going to like look back on this,
right,
like in years to come. Like, I knew Tammy before she even thought about writing this.
I started it ages ago. I had it all written out. It had a lot of Scottish folklore actually into it. That was how I learned. That was how I learned about kelpies and cushies and everything. All of these sort of lore. But whether or not I would ever go back and retouch it, I don't know. I did get a first draft done.
Please.
Do it.
I'll read it.
Oh my God.
You're going to be the next. I don't know. Like, what's that guy that wrote Game of Thrones?
No, definitely.
I was going to say
no,
Martin.
No,
Tolkien. No.
Keep going, Erin. Keep going.
Who's George R.R. Martin? Who's that?
Yeah, it's Milton.
That's him.
Oh, is that him?
Yeah.
I feel like we're listening to the beginnings of that.
Getting close to Tolkien there, and I was like, keep going, you're nearly there, you're in the right realm.
Nearly. For someone that likes books, I know nothing about authors. But see, all my stories when I was a child were all based around people in the classroom, because I wanted to entertain the people in the classroom, so I used to just use them, and I would like make stories up about them. And I never ever really invented any new characters, apart from one time when I used to tell my dad all my ideas, and I'd be like, Dad, I've got this idea where a girl goes under her bed and there's a portal and she pops out and she's in a caveman world, and he was like, it's been done. I was like, oh.
I think everything's been done at this point. Everything has been done.
Yeah, I know. I was like, oh, never mind then.
No, but that's awesome. I mean, again, it's like, it seems like a very creative thing. Like, I would love to know if there's like been any kind of studies on the type of people that do this, and like, are they like creative types? Like, it seems to me in my head that these like people who do this are very creative, and like, obviously we've all done YouTube and stuff, and that's quite a creative thing in its own right. Like, I would imagine there's definitely must be a crossover between people who do this and then people who are creative or write books or tell stories or make videos or whatever.
Do you know something I've just thought about? This, I don't know if Tammy, you're potentially going to bring this up, but for some reason, right, I can't think on the spot, or not on the spot, but just generally, I can't invent new characters, new worlds, new stories and things like that. But see, when I'm dreaming, when I fall asleep at night, I'll wake up and I'll write down all the sort of like creepy, scary dreams. I love my nightmares. Oh my god, I would watch that, and I have written down a bunch of nightmares that I've had because I've been like, how did my brain make that up and I wasn't even there? Like, why can't my awake brain make this stuff up? So it's there, it's in my head.
Yeah.
But for some reason, when I'm awake, I can't think of that stuff.
Why don't you write them as
up with these amazing ideas?
Why don't you write them as a book of shorts, like short hoarder?
I've started doing
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So that's both of you. You're both going to be famous authors.
But it's only from my dreams, not from like something that I've come up with. So it's really weird. I'm like, how can my dream brain come up with that?
But that's what I'm thinking. Maybe all these famous authors, that's how they started.
Who knows? Like, I've had all these, I don't want to say them like on this, but there's been a few that have been really, like, I wrote one, I think I might have put it on Patreon, I can't remember. And it was like, there was one about a wee boy without a face, and it was in the garden, blah blah. And there's another one where I looked up in the sky and there was like all these like this weird thing floating in the sky, and I was like, what the hell's that? And it turned out it was just a circle of people like looking like shadows with their like heads down, and they were all just floating in the sky, and everyone was like, what the hell is this? And it was so creepy looking. And then they all just dropped to the ground. And there's been other ones I can't mention because they're too brutal, but
so this kind of is getting on a bit of a subject that I thought we were going to be talking about today.
This is coming. Yeah. It is coming. Yeah, we're going to be easing into it.
Jump the gun.
You're already creating a beautiful segue. But before we get into the actual dreaming aspect, there is a song that was done by one of my. This is going back to like the emo days, back when we were emo kids. And there was a song that was done by. I used to be an emo kid, 100%. There was a song done by Evanescence called "Imaginary." And anybody that has heard this song, if you go back and listen to it again and listen to the lyrics are about maladaptive daydreaming, but obviously it's not really a topic that's heavily spoken about. But I've got a little snippet of some of the lyrics here for you, and because we were talking about maladaptive daydreaming being that sense of wanting to separate yourself from reality, the lyrics in the song go, "Don't say I'm out of touch with this rampant chaos, your reality. I know well what lies beyond my sleeping refuge, the nightmare I built my own world to escape." And those are the lyrics, those are some of the lyrics. Wow. And then it basically is her singing about her creating this own world, and actually it's on the same album where she had written the song that she had lost a family member. I believe it was her sister that she lost. And so it is all about escaping reality, isn't it? So
but again, we're talking about someone who's an artist.
Yes.
So we're talking creative people here.
The only Evanescence song I know is "Bring Me to Life."
"Bring Me to Life" is a great song, but arguably as well, that's what Neverland could be from Peter Pan too.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, those kids were actually daydreaming the whole thing. There's loads of ways that you could look at this. There's definitely been multiple interpretations of it throughout lots of different kinds of media, but
Freddy Krueger.
Yeah. Is bringing us into our topic of lucid dreaming. Have you ever heard of lucid dreaming?
I've heard of it. I don't know what it is, but I think I have them.
Okay. You think you really? I'm so jealous.
Just thinking about it.
You think you have them, but you don't know what they are?
So I'll tell you what I've got, and then you can tell me if this is what this is.
Okay. Yeah. Go.
So I've had these dreams in the past, and to my mind, they're not dreams because they're real, right? And actually, I was talking about this with a friend in Mother Half the Day, when we were out about, because it relates to kind of horror stuff. So I've had a lot of dreams where I wake up because I'm convinced I'm seeing something.
Nope.
And it is there, I awake, my eyes open, I get out of bed and try and check out this thing, whatever it is. And I even talk to my wife and wake her up and say I'm seeing this thing. It exists. But then, after a few minutes, it disappears. Sometimes they're terrifying things.
Seen a ghost. I don't
Sometimes.
think that's dreaming, mate.
So I don't know. I don't know if this is this lucid dreaming or what.
It's not, no, but
it's not, Sean.
It's really cool what you're talking about, and we definitely need to do an episode on that.
What is that then?
Sean,
Is that just hallucinating?
Seen a ghost, mate. Because I thought you were going to talk about sleep paralysis, but the fact you
Yes.
actually move and get up, that doesn't mean it's sleep paralysis, which means you're potentially seeing a ghost, mate.
So this is how bad it is. I have seen an old woman, the same old woman, open my door at my bedroom and look at me.
Sean,
I have
you're haunted,
seen
mate.
a baby coming through the door. I have seen skeletons. I've not had it for a while, to be fair. There was one particular house that I lived in that had it quite often. There was one time I woke my wife up and I had my hands on the wall and I woke her up saying, look, there's a waterfall coming down off the wall, down at the back of our bed, behind us. I was convinced there was a waterfall and we were like getting soaked in it. And then she woke up, turned the lights off and the whole thing just disappeared. But like, I'm awake, I'm conscious.
That's so cool.
Sean,
Because
that
Erin,
is-
I would have thought that would have been like a sleep paralysis thing too, but he's moving. That's really interesting.
He's moving. I've
Yeah.
never heard of that in my life, Sean. I think
Yeah.
you're actually seeing ghosts.
I mean, it does terrify me a wee bit.
So what's happening there is very similar to what I get with my exploding head syndrome,
Okay.
where, but for me it's sounds. For you, it's you're seeing things, but for me it's sound. And mine's is always accompanied by sleep paralysis, which is annoying as fuck.
Oh,
But
no.
effectively, what it is your brain is half awake. You're not in a deep sleep yet, but you're also not fully awake. But your eyes can be open, and so your brain is registering the room around you, but you're still half in a dream. And so some of the things that you're seeing aren't real, and some of the things you're seeing are real, and your brain can't really differentiate the difference between the two of them. I'm not sure 100% what the name of that is, because I would have put it down to a form of sleep paralysis, but because you're moving, it can't be. So,
is
but for
mental.
me, I have exploding head syndrome. And this actually, believe it or not, you know how people are always like, don't smack your kids because it'll give them like anxiety and shit when they're older. For me, it developed into exploding head syndrome because mine's is always
God.
my mum shouting at me because I've done something. But it's not just that. I can be frozen in bed, half awake, and like the door isn't moving for me. There's nothing coming through it, but on the other side of it, it's either my mum shouting through the door at me and she's going to come into the room, or it's like a monster banging on the door. And it's like enough to somewhat
Tammy, I
jolt me
think I've
awake,
had
but not
this.
enough to properly wake me up. And it is the most infuriating thing on the planet.
That sounds terrifying.
It is.
I think I've had that. I hear my mum shouting on me sometimes.
Yes, that's called exploding head
Erin!
syndrome.
And
Wow.
then recently I heard a little giggle in the corner of my room, and I know for a fact, like, I wasn't freaked out because I knew I was half asleep.
That is
But I was
ghost
awake.
stuff.
But that, like, usually I'd be terrified, but I knew that I'd just woke up, so I knew it was sleep related. But yeah, I was like, oh, I've never had that.
Have we all just described something that none of which is lucid dreaming?
Yes. So lucid dreaming is the ability to control your dream, to realise that you're dreaming at night and manipulate the dream to whatever you want. There are several ways that people can do it. Number one, you can listen to binaural beats, which when you're falling asleep, so it's a type of beat that goes on that kind of helps your concentration. And so as you're falling asleep, it can kind of take you into, but also not fully into the dream, allowing you to take control of it. Another thing is you could go throughout the day asking yourself, am I asleep? Am I asleep? So that when you're sleeping, you might ask yourself that as you're dreaming and realise, actually, you're dreaming. There's another way that you could do it. You can look at a particular colour. Red is always a good one to start with. Every time you see the colour red, ask yourself, am I dreaming? And then when you see it in a dream, you'll ask yourself, am I dreaming? And you'll take control of the dream. So,
Wow.
People
you
talk about pinching themselves as well.
say that again, Erin?
People talk about pinching themselves sometimes as
Oh.
well, but then you can do that in your dream. So it's all very bizarre. I've always wanted to be able to lucid dream, but just couldn't be arsed.
I was going to
This is
ask,
something I've not had.
I'm guessing neither of you have done this then.
No.
I have done it, not intentionally. Like, I remember there's been a few times that I've been in a dream and I've been like, oh, I know I'm dreaming. And there's been times where I've actually said to people in a dream, oh, I'm dreaming, so carry on. But I've never done anything like dead exciting. again, it's all been social. I've went up and talked to people, or I've like had different interactions with people. It's never that exciting. So it's probably not like maybe proper lucid dreaming, but I have been sort of lucid. I guess. What about you?
I have done it once, and it was back when I learned what lucid dreaming was, and I did it with the binaural beats. So for anybody who wants to try this, that's binaural, spelled BINAURAL. So look that up on YouTube. You're looking for binaural beats, and as you're falling asleep,
we should all try this?
You should definitely try it. Yeah, it took me a few nights of listening to them before it actually happened, but then I was able to fully take control of a dream, and I'd been having nightmares. I'd been having nightmares about like zombies coming and attacking, like a zombie apocalypse thing.
Wow.
And so it happened to be that during that dream, that was when I took control. And I remember I was like in my grand's basement, and like I say basement, but it's like the bottom stair landing before you go up the stairs. And we were hiding in there. We had like everything up against the door to stop them getting in and getting to us. And like the house was wrecked, and it was just very apocalyptic. And I remember looking to whoever was beside in the dream and going, I'm dreaming though, so we're all good. And I just stood up, like pulled the wood off the door, walked outside in amongst all the zombies, turned into a dragon and fucked them all. I was like, because I could. There was nothing stopping me. I could fly away as well. It was great. It was so cool.
I think there's been a few times like when I've been dreaming, but I have changed the course of the dream. But like at that moment, I've not known that I was dreaming. But then later on, like when I'm coming out of it, I know that was a dream.
And
I don't think that's the same thing.
Well, it's very similar, yeah, because you were still able to control it, and that's what lucid dreaming is taking control of a dream. So it could be that maybe part of you kind of took control because you understood what was kind of happening.
Yeah.
Maybe you weren't fully aware of, I am dreaming, but part of you was kind of like, I can manipulate this, you know? So,
like for example, there's been a few times when I've been like getting attacked for it or shot or something, and thought, shit, I'm going to die now.
Oh, no.
And then at the last minute, I'm like, that was just I'm dreaming. It's fine. And then wake up. But it's like always like at the last minute before waking up.
Like how amazing must it be to just fall asleep and then start dreaming, knowing that you can do whatever the hell you want, and not like a daydream, like you're actually living it because it's a dream.
I feel like I've seen a movie about this.
Probably there's movies
Inception.
and books about everything, isn't there?
I'm sure there was like a big movie, like a Hollywood movie about somebody who could do this.
Inception.
Is it maybe Inception?
I think it's Inception. Well, it had Elliot Page and Leonardo DiCaprio. And it was massive. And it's all
where
about
they used to
dreams, being able
take
to
control
your
of the dreams, didn't they, in the dream world?
Was The Matrix similar? Can't remember.
I'm going to look this up right now.
Yeah, it was like a Matrix style thing, but it wasn't as cleverly executed, I don't think. Like the Matrix made sense to me because they explained it all.
I didn't even watch
that. Inception, they didn't like explain how they got into the dreams, and that always irked me. It was just a case of, this is how we can do it. And I was like, but how? How are you all in the same person's dream? How? You know?
Yeah. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I might rewatch it. Is Shaun, are you looking it up?
But I can't find the one that I think I saw.
Phenomenal soundtrack.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were talking about binaural beats. I actually have a binaural microphone.
Ooh.
So basically, what I just started doing it for, I started watching a lot of YouTube videos where people like walk on the street, like in places like New York. They would just walk for an hour, and they would record the sounds on the site without saying anything. But the sound of the place gets recorded, and basically they have one. You put like an earphone in each side of your ears, right? And on each earphone, also there's a microphone sticking out of it, and it records, so that when you listen to it, you hear it like what their ears are hearing. If that makes sense.
Oh no.
So whatever they're hearing on the right side, traffic, you'll hear on your right side when you're listening to it. And whatever they're hearing on their left side, like, I don't know, people talking, you'll hear it on your left side. So it makes you feel when you're watching the video that you're actually in it.
Oh,
That's
wow.
weird.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So I think binaural is like, it basically it separates the left and right sound, so it feels realistic. And I don't know, maybe that's how they kind of prompt the dream stuff. I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah, I'll admit when I was listening to it, was listening out my phone. So maybe there's something to do with beats where it's if you've got headphones on, it will come into different ears at different times potentially.
Yeah,
must be surely.
I think that's how it works.
The fact it worked for you. So it must
definitely
work.
worked. definitely.
We should all
work
learn
for
how
me.
to do it, and then we'll meet up in a dream.
Inception style, love it.
Yeah, we'll record a podcast in the dream.
Well, let me ask then. What's your if you ever had a favourite dream?
That's a big question.
All my nightmares.
Erin's just like
I've never met anyone who loves their nightmares.
me neither.
Like, they're obviously horrific at the time, but afterwards I'm just like, wow, yeah.
But do you never like
that
wake up
is-
like crying or like scared because you've had it?
Oh, I wake up crying quite often.
But then you
You're
think that was
starting to
amazing.
sound like a masochist, Erin.
Not when I've been crying. Like, usually when I wake up crying, it's because there's been like a death or something in my dream. But when it's actually like scary stuff, I love horror. So I usually wake up and I'm like, yes, oh my god, I love that. Especially if I'm freaked out, I'll just write it down. I'll turn a light on and write it down. But I've had a lot of really, like, I just love dreams so much.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. I
so-
just had a funny thought.
What?
I'm like, normal people out here getting like wet dreams over normal things, and Erin's out there getting fucking her rocks off to horror dreams. I'm sorry.
I was like, ooh, Freddie, where are you?
I'm listening and I'm thinking this sounds a bit weird. Like this person actually loves like torture dreams.
Sorry. Right,
They're like,
sorry, I'm listening.
Wanting to be a Nightmare on Elm Street, I'm like that person that's like, oh, please, Freddie.
Wow, you said
I've
that
actually
really
got a Freddy Krueger
enthusiastically.
glove on my door, on my bedroom door. I have a Freddy Krueger glove.
Of course you do.
You
Yeah.
for real?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's just
God.
chilling
Oh
on
my
my door.
God.
Yeah. People used
See,
to
I
comment
couldn't
on it
deal
in
with
my
this. Like,
last-
I'm quite a soft soul. I get really scared by things
Me
like this.
too, Sean. I'm terrified of things easily as well.
I had a really bad one once. I don't think I could. I'll tell you about it after. I don't think I can say it on this. I've not really told many people because it's so messed up.
Okay, well we should
We'll
maybe
listen to after.
save it for a Halloween episode.
It's like one of these things that's, I wrote it down, but I was like, if this was a film, it would be banned in like 40 countries.
Oh my god.
Oh my god, what kind of snuff dream is this?
I'll tell you after.
We'll tell it after.
Okay.
Fair
I
enough.
don't think I can say it. It's kind of horrible.
The poor
my
audience.
God.
We'll come back with you to we'll come back to that audience. Don't worry,
Can
we'll
you say
come
whether
back.
you were the hero or the villain in the story?
Neither. It was sort of like, it was like a haunted house type situation, but
Okay.
different.
See,
Okay.
zombie stuff, I think that really freaks me out. I never want to dream about zombies because I
don't
get
mind
terrified
zombies.
watching zombie stuff.
Me too.
Really?
The thought-
I'm just like, nah.
The thought of
I love
being
it.
eaten alive is the most terrifying thing in the planet to me. Like, what could be a
I don't
slower
know.
death than being eaten alive?
I'd just take it, man. I'd just be like, I don't think I have the willpower for a zombie apocalypse. I'd just be like, do you know what? Have me. I don't care.
Just
I'm
bite
not
Have
up
me.
for this.
I'd be
have
the one
me
leading
take-
it, so it's all good.
Hey, Sam, you've had
The thing
experience. You were training for this.
Yeah, I was. Yeah,
Yeah,
I was
you are
like,
one.
fucking let's go. I'm one of the first to turn. Yeah, for sure.
I don't know. The
Um,
thing that freaks me out the most is exorcism stuff. When people are so unlike themselves and contort and talk in different languages and different voices or multiple voices, that freaks me out. I can't deal with that. Thankfully, I've not had a
Yeah.
dream about that. Touch wood.
See, that scares me as well. Like, I cannot watch, and I'll never ever will watch The Exorcist because I know it will terrify me.
Oh, I love The Exorcist.
I can't.
I
I
get
can't.
offended when people laugh at it. I'm like, how dare you laugh at this? It's a masterpiece.
That's a film that I'll never watch.
Do you know what? I prefer horror. Like, I prefer the horror that I make up in my head. Like, see that movie It? Like the one with the clown
yeah.
and the kids, the most recent remake, right? Fucking brilliant movie, loved it. And then I realised that they were like, oh, but he's an alien, and I was like, that's just ruined the movie for me. Because in my
Yeah.
head, he was a paedophile, and that was so much scarier. Like, it was like the whole eating thing was metaphorical. It wasn't literal. It wasn't him actually eating the kids. It was like metaphorical for what else he was doing before he butchered them. So
Have
like,
you read the book? You should read the
no,
book. It's good.
no, I've not read the
It's a
book.
big boy.
I've never seen this, and it sounds awful. Like,
It is
See,
awful, but like people were like, "Oh, he's an alien," and I'm like, "See, that's just ruined it for me now."
That ruined it for me with Freddy Krueger because when I watched the original Freddy Krueger, it wasn't out there that he was a paedophile, so I never really took it that way. I was just like, oh, he's after Wayne's. Like, now that I say that,
Yeah,
He
that's
was
I'm like,
an alien
okay. But in the remake, he was a paedophile, and that's why like the parents burned him. But in the original film, that wasn't clear. It was just the parents burned him because he was a bad guy. And now I'm like, oh, so naive.
see, I've never seen. Like, I can't watch any of these films. I just can't do it.
So, You never
I'm
know
a
every
big foodie.
night.
I tell you what was phenomenal though, just since we're on this topic, before I pull us back to our original topic, is is the Haunting a Hell House. Because I'm not big on horror, right? I will admit I don't really like horror. I will watch some horror, and I'll usually save it for like Halloween. Like October is my month to put on things that I wouldn't normally watch, and horror's one of them. But see the Haunting a Hell House, everybody was talking about it, and it was like a cinematic masterpiece, and I was like, fine, I'll watch it. It is phenomenal. It is so
Even my friend
good.
who hates horror said that as well. She gets terrified with horror, and she was like, I love the Haunting of Hill House. And
It's
I
because
watched
it's so good. There was great
scary?
characters. There was great story. It was Sean. It creates unease, and see when you watch all the behind the scenes stuff, you see how they did it. It's incredible. But there's not
and
really.
one of the ghosts. Oh,
I was going to say there's not really jump scares as such. There's only one.
oh no! Oh my god! I actually remember episode 8. I'm so scared. I actually screamed. I don't scream at stuff. I am not a screamer. Oh, I don't scream at stuff like that. But I threw my phone. Oh my god!
You threw your phone?
So
Didn't
the
expect
reason
it whatsoever.
The reason why this is like one of the most renowned jump scares that have ever happened in television history is because, Sean, the whole series, like these episodes are like an hour long, and we've never had a jump scare in any episode. It's not that type of scariness, it's unease. It creates unease and it makes you feel creepy. It's hard to describe, but it doesn't ever make you jump. And so we were led into a false sense of security, okay? Nobody expected it. And then I remember I was dating a guy at the time, and it was me and this guy called Warren, and we were watching the episodes together. We were sitting here on my couch, and the jump scare happened, and the two of us nearly ended up in my neighbour's upstairs living room. Like, we had to pause it because we were both like, oh my god. But I would
even
say,
a scary point.
Is this a series then, or a movie?
It's a series. And it is phenomenal, Sean. It's so good.
She was doing something very, very normal.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, you just get, oh my god.
It's so good. It's so good, Sean. You have to watch it. There's, I think, is it episode 6, Erin, where they do it all in one continuous shot, the whole episode.
I can't remember.
The funeral one.
The book's really good. The book's brilliant. It's written by a woman. Brilliant.
Brilliant. It's so good, Sean. I highly recommend it. There's that one episode, I think they did it all in either 1 or 2 takes, the whole episode, and it's just the camera's just turning and the actors are running in and out the scene, swapping with their children's self, swapping with their adult self. The ghost is running in and out the scene in the background, but you don't even notice the ghost half the time. It's so good. It's so good. Right, anyway, we never got to the topic of what is your favourite dream. So, like, do either of you have a favourite dream? Well, Erin, you say all your scary ones. So, Sean, what about you?
Mm-hmm.
So there are dreams. I remember my dreams when they happen, and then a day after. But I've never wrote them down, and I forget them.
So there's not anyone that stands out to you, no?
I don't think so. Like, no. Apart like the ones that we were talking about earlier, where I can like imagine myself in this good life. Like I can remember them, but the dreams that I have at night when I'm sleeping, I don't remember them after a few days, and I generally can't pinpoint anything.
Well, I know that's been happening to me a lot more as an adult, but like I had one I remember as a kid that it's always stuck with me, and it is like it was kind of creepy, but it was so beautiful, and it's basically this is going to freak anybody out that has that phobia of being in water, right? So apologies in advance, but I was in the ocean, and you know when the ocean's got like that kind of murky water that you can't quite see through. It was like that, and I was just in the endless ocean. Like I couldn't see above me, around me there was nothing. It was just in ocean, and I was floating, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere I could hear like whale song, and then just this one black shadow, this tiny speck that gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and all of a sudden it's just this giant whale just circling around me in the water, singing this beautiful whale song. And for some reason, it didn't freak me out. I know that sounds like some people's nightmare, but that to me was like the most calming dream. And I've loved the ocean ever since.
That's amazing.
No way.
That's a beautiful dream.
That freaks me out, yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely like, what is it called? The fear of like the deep ocean.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Hold on, let me
I think that's like a natural fear that everyone should have.
I like it.
Can you imagine like these dreams when I've been on a yacht? Imagine that like it breaks down and it sinks, and you are there, on your Todd,
Every night in my dreams.
in the middle of nowhere.
Thalassophobia. Thalassophobia is the fear of like incredibly deep, dark water.
Like, I love the ocean at the same time. It's the same as space. Like, I love the idea of space, but it freaks me out.
Same. That's it boggles my mind, and then I don't like thinking about it anymore.
Do any of you remember your first ever dream? Like, I have a very early dream of being, like, I went to this, like, local little shopping centre when I was a child, and Jerry Halliwell fed me chips on a spoon.
Wow. That's a good dream.
Spoon's my earliest dream ever.
See, this is the thing, I genuinely can't remember them after a while. Like, I've had dreams in all different types of situations, like, in the ocean probably, other places, like, everywhere in the world you can imagine, but they come out my head. Maybe I should write them down.
You definitely should.
I feel like it's a lot of, like, male-female type thing. I don't know if that's a thing, but a lot of the men in my life always say they can't remember their dreams and don't have, like, a big association with their dreams, whereas the women in my life are the opposite, and they're always like, oh, I had this really intense dream last night, blah 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 blah, and they always remember their dreams from when they were younger.
See, that's the thing though, I can remember, like, the day after, like, I could say to you, oh, I had this amazing dream last night, and I could tell you about it, but then, like, a few days later it'd be gone.
It'd be gone. So I'm just going to bring a couple images into our Discord server that is like a test for the fear of deep ocean. So see if you can see if these images freak you out.
Oh no, I hate them.
Is that doing it for you?
Yeah. Oh.
See, that doesn't freak me out at all. It's I have trypophobia, which is a fear of like holes and circles and dots clustered together. That's mine. That is mine.
See, one thing I can't look at. So that doesn't bother. These pictures don't bother me too much, but see pictures you see them on Instagram quite a lot. Or somebody standing on like the edge of a balcony on a high building.
Yeah, yeah.
I literally imagine myself in that situation there, and I get dizzy. And like I have literally seen a photo of somebody like sitting on the edge of a building, and my feet have hurt. My feet start hurting.
Interesting.
It's like I'm falling and landing on my feet. I don't know. It's weird.
I think it's just the idea of we don't know what's down there fully. Yeah. We've only discovered a certain amount of it, and it's so big. And aside from sharks and all the stuff that can kill you in the ocean, that freaks me out. But there's also, like, I've watched videos, like alien-related videos, where it's like that pilot guy that I'm obsessed with that chased a UFO. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look up David Faber. But he said that whatever he saw, it seemed like it was communicating with a dark shadow in the ocean. But then the ocean's so big, you're like, well, there could potentially be stuff down there that we don't know about. So that freaks me out.
I don't know if it was the same guy, but I read a story about a guy quite recently that the US military released the files where they were chasing these objects that were going like bizarre different directions and stuff. But one of them started just under the water.
Yeah, it was the declassified government videos and stuff like that. They're from years and years ago. But yeah, he got interviewed by Joe Rogan, and that sort of blew it all out again. Like it became this thing, and it was amazing. And he's just like this normal wee guy that was like, I didn't realise it was such a big deal.
Of course it's a big deal.
You chased a UFO. He's just like, we see these things all the time. And it's like, they're the Tic Tacs or whatever. And I've went into a deep hole, talking of deep holes.
We could do a whole episode on this,
we
definitely.
Should do a whole episode, please, Erin. I would love to learn more about all of this sort of stuff.
Okay.
Add it to your list. Create a list on your phone. Like, this is what I've got. I've got my notepad, and every single time I say I'm going to do an episode on that, I add it to my list.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then.
I'll definitely do that one.
Before we start to wrap this episode up, then we usually do a little segment all about what we've been loving. But before we get there, have you enjoyed this topic?
Oh my god!
Definitely, because it's made
me.
I
could talk about this all day.
Yeah, I mean, it's made me realise something that I have been doing for years is a thing that other people have.
I know you're going to try. You're going to try a lucid dream if you can, maybe one day in the future.
Maybe, but I don't know if I have the ability for that.
I think we should do it.
Give it a try.
No, everyone can do it. If you learn, we can all learn. We should all learn and do it and just report back.
Yep. So remember, you've got your binaural beats that you can try, or the like asking, the pinching yourself that Erin mentioned, or the asking yourself when you see a particular colour, am I dreaming? There's a few different ways you can try and do it, but it does take time.
If you
Google
it's
not going to happen.
Yeah. if you Google it, there are different ways that you could, because I've tried it before, but not like religiously, so it's not work. But try it. We should all try it. Ooh.
Definitely.
I probably won't do the Beats thing because when I have headphones in or earphones in at night, because I live home alone, I get freaked out.
Yeah, true. No, that's true. That's true.
I could only do that when I lived with my mum and dad. I'd listen to music before I go to sleep. Don't do that now. Because
See, I like to hear what's around me generally.
Do you?
Yes.
See, I cannot not fall asleep with music on. I have to listen to music, but not like
I'm just scared I
headphones.
won't hear the ghosts.
I don't have my headphones on. I just have my music playing beside me on my phone.
Oh yeah, that's better actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then you can hear what
then
you can hear,
the
like the
ghosts
ambient sounds as well.
Yeah, and it's like it's really low. Like the music is just a little hum in the background. So like if anything happened around me, I'm still fully aware of noises. So it's like it's just like
evanescence.
background. Yeah, but it's also meant to help. Well, it's sleep music on YouTube. There's two in particular that I listen to almost every night religiously. But it's like it helps with the exploding head syndrome. I'm less likely to get it if my mind has alternate like noise to focus on.
Yeah.
So anyway, so what have we been loving this week then? Erin, we'll start with you. What have you been loving?
Well, I totally forgot about this segment, but now that you mention it, I just watched this TV. I was not prepared. I watched a TV show called Pieces of Her. And it's got, I get mixed up with Toni Collette and Tilda Swinton. I don't know why, but I think it's Toni Collette. It's probably Tilda Swinton. And no, it's Toni Collette, and it's sort of like about her daughter, and her daughter's, I don't want to spoil it, but her daughter's sort of finding out her mum's not who she says she was, and she's, each episode's like going through trying to piece together bits of her mum's life, but it's really exciting and like twisty and turny. And I also watched School of Rock the other day, which I haven't watched in years, and oh, I love it so much.
Would you hate me if I said I've never seen it?
No, I hate when people do that. Like, I hate when you say you haven't watched a film and someone goes, you haven't seen that film. And you're like, I hate that.
I know I should see it because it's like such an innocent film, right?
Oh, it's brilliant. Oh, you need to watch it. It's great. I watched it when it came out, and I used to fancy the wee guy that played guitar. Zach Woody Hair.
Plus, Jack Black is just awesome. I love him. He's amazing.
Oh, so good. He's so good in that, Sean. You need to watch it. You should watch that next.
Put it on my list.
Please.
Along with the House of Haunted Hill or something. The horror.
Haunting of Hill House.
God.
What
Maybe I'll watch that, and then I'll watch School of Rock afterwards to calm myself down.
Yeah.
School of Rock's a wee easy watch that's quite funny, and please watch it. Oh, it's brilliant.
All right, Sean, what have you been loving?
I've not really thought about this, but I'm just thinking about it now. So, and this might sound a bit morbid, but it's not meant to be. So, obviously, right now, we're seeing on the news all the time, there's been a lot of tragedy with the war in Ukraine, right? Which is horrible, and there's so many horrible things come out of it. But actually, at the same time, there's been a lot of good things we've seen during as well. We've seen, and I think, like, tragedy always brings out the worst in humans and the best of humans as well. So, like...
Agreed.
There's, like, a lot of good stories that have come out of it, where people have, like, gone out their way to help other people. Like the refugees crossing the border, or people who have like welcomed strangers into their house.
People taking people's children.
Yeah, or like when there was a wee girl that sang a song from, I think it was Frozen, Brave, one of his films.
Yeah.
Oh my god!
And then when I heard that she had got out of the country, I felt like that made me feel good.
Oh.
You know, these things, like there's been a lot of good stories and among the terrible ones.
You need
and obviously people have done a lot to raise money, and but also the other one as well is the learning about the Ukrainian people and how they've kind of been standing up for themselves, and also learning a bit about their history in terms of the revolutions that we've had in 2014 and blah blah blah. They seem like a very brave people.
Enjoy your tweets about all of this, Sean.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not right about the whole situation, but it's like as an observer,
I just like following. I just find it interesting. Always.
It's definitely interesting.
Have a wee creep. See what you're saying about it.
But I think generally there's been a lot of really heartwarming stories out of it as well. Like people have done amazing things to help others who are in need. I just hope we can extend that in future to other tragic situations that happen as well.
It's so easy to fall into this like hole of depressing news and oh god, the world's getting worse and worse and things are awful. But you need these little stories like that. That's why I think like after the normal news there should be a whole hour segment on only good news. Yeah. Definitely. Because it's just the news is always really sad and awful. So we need like oh, this nice story happened, this thing happened.
I agree, and like, there's actually an example of that. So I was watching the news the other night, and there was there was actually a Scottish reporter for BBC. I can't remember his name now, but anyway, he was out in the far east of Ukraine, close to the border with Russia, and the place has obviously been bombed to hell. And it was the middle of the night, and he was out in this place, like on this road. It was totally abandoned. There was nobody, and then all of a sudden there was this wee old woman on her own, who was clearly lost and confused and disorientated. And he said that in the clip. And then it just cut away to something else. And I'm thinking, like, this woman was in severe danger. She was on her own, and she looked about 70 or 80 year old. Then what happened? But then I went on his Twitter and I found out, by the way, for all those people asking, we got her to safety.
Oh, thank God.
That should have been in the report.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should have been.
Because ended up being a good news story. We found this woman on her own and saved her. Anyway, I mean, obviously the war is not a good story overall, but I think there's been good stories in among it.
Like, you have to see it does help to see all the little good stories that come out of it, all the positive things.
Yeah.
Not that it's a positive situation in the slightest, but
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has been. It's been really nice following along on your Twitter actually as well, Shaun, for it all.
Oh,
My thing this week has been well, I've had a lot of stuff going on this week. For those people that have been following my socials will know. So I'm actually going to revert back to something less of what I've been loving this week and more onto what I've been loving in general. And I'm giving a shout out to a Scottish artist called Iona Fife. And that is,
I know her.
That is, yeah. Fife spelled Fyfe for anybody wanting to look her up. And one of my absolute favourite songs, which is sung all in Scots, is Sleepy Tune. So if you can hear and listen to that song and be able to tell what that song is about, you can understand Scots. So if anybody's out there, anybody wants to take the challenge, go and listen to that song. So it's Sleepy Tune by Iona Fife. It's on Spotify and it's on YouTube. Definitely give it a listen. It's such an upbeat, brilliant song.
I've followed her for years. I've always liked her. She's obviously a big advocate for Scots language, and yeah,
she's great. Yep.
There's a bit of a movement of young people who have kind of taken back ownership of Scots and Gaelic.
Lenny Saurus.
Oh yeah, as well. Yeah, Lenny. Yeah.
I love her so much. Oh my God.
She's cool.
She's my favourite.
There's a lot of really good. That's so many good Scottish artists out there. So many.
And you know what? Sadly, as a YouTuber that brought this out, TikTok.
Yeah.
That's where a lot of these people started and got their, started to be creative.
There's like a younger generation that are coming out and sort of, they're just doing really well. It's good to see.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
Feel like an old fogey.
I know. Back in my day, we just had YouTube.
Back in my day.
I know.
Well then, that is everything from us. Have either of you got any last things to add?
No, really.
I can't wait to see what I'm going to dream about the night after this conversation.
See if it's a horror dream, don't tell me about it, please. I will never sleep again, knowing you're...
Erin can't wait for the horror dream. She wants it.
Just send all mine to Erin. Well then, it's time for us to finally Haud Yer Wheesht, but before we do, make sure you get a chance for your voice to be heard, and you can rate us on Spotify or iTunes, and subscribe and like the video on YouTube. Feel free to send us your comments about the episode, which you can do by following us on Twitter at Haud Yer Wheesht, or the Instagram Haud Yer Wheesht podcast, or on YouTube. And that is everything with us. So we will see you in about 2 weeks for the next episode, and have a great time, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheerio.
Bye.